Hey guys, welcome back. Today I'm going to show you how I made this taco clay charm for a necklace. First, I'm going to start conditioning some translucent clay. Any kind of translucent clay is going to be okay. Next, I'm going to add some black micro beads, and I'm going to work those into the clay really good. I would rather use brown or black craft sand, but these actually work pretty good. It just adds like those little black specks that you see on a tortilla shell is what I'm trying to accomplish with this. You could definitely do it with black polymer clay or brown polymer clay or paint, but I prefer using either craft sand or these micro beads to just kind of get more of a realistic texture in the taco shell. Just mixing those in there really well. That way I get an even distribution of the micro beads. Next, I'm gonna roll out the clay. I roll it out really thin and use my medium-sized circle cutter to cut a circle out. Smooth the edges of the circle. Now I'm going to take a old toothbrush to add texture on both sides of the circle or taco shell. I use multiple toothbrushes that have different bristles and different effects to try to get as much texture and holes as I can in the shell. To me, the more texture, the better. It just adds more of a realistic type feel to the shell, which I do a lot of texture. You'll see me switching back and forth between different toothbrushes. These are old toothbrushes, and yeah, they may have been used, but I cleaned them with alcohol and everything, so they're not like, got teeth gunk or anything on them. Next, I'm taking a small piece of red clay and conditioning it, and I'm going to form it into a really long, skinny rectangle for the tomato slices. I use my tissue razor blade to cut the rectangle into even skinnier strips, and I'm going to put them on my picture frame glass, and I'm going to pre-bake these. And you see, trying to get it into a rectangle instead of like a rolled piece of clay. And I mean, you don't have to cut these perfect either. I mean, they're just going to get sliced up into smaller bits later on anyway, so it doesn't matter how perfect these are, just as long as they're small thin strips. Now I'm going to take a piece of translucent clay and an even smaller piece of green clay, and I'm mixing them partially just so I can get almost like a marbled effect to make some little pieces of lettuce. I don't want to mix it all the way through. I want the different shades of green and translucent peeking through. I'm using my ball tool to kind of smush down the edges of the clay against the table, like really flat against the table, and it makes little tiny leaves of a lettuce, like shredded lettuce. It's really cool. I do not pre-bake the lettuce like I do with the tomato. I'm not going to pre-bake that. Now I'm using yellow clay in a really thin sheet, and I'm going to slice it into small strips for the shredded cheese. I'll be pre-baking this with the tomato slices. Now I'm taking an orangey yellow chalk pastel and a red brown chalk pastel, and I'm going to use these to shade and color both sides of my taco shell. And I'm going to use my toothbrush again, part way through this, to add some of the texture back that I lost with the chalk pastel. Sometimes the pastel fills in some of my little tiny holes that I made with my toothbrush before. And I'm just using the darker color on the outside of the shell, just kind of like it got browned on the edge. And the pre-baking time is going to be at 275 for 10 minutes. I'm not going to actually try to cure my whole clay pieces. Adding in some more texture. This is a really stiff bristled paintbrush. Now I'm taking my X-Acto knife, and I'm going to use it to shape and form the taco shell, and I'm going to pre-bake it with the tomato and cheese slices in my toaster oven. It's metal and it won't melt. You can use anything, crochet hook, anything like that. That's the setup that it'll be in my oven, and here it is all done. I'm just going to pop the shell off and pop the cheese and tomato strips off. I suspended the taco shell on my X-Acto knife in between my 2 circle cutters in the oven. That way that my taco shell wasn't laying flat on my baking surface, because that's just gonna ruin all that texture that I worked hard for in the beginning. So I just like it to be suspended up in the air, and I just use something to kind of hold it up there. I'm just chopping up the cheese and the tomatoes into tiny little bits. The cheese I keep like a longer strip, and then the tomatoes I do little chunkier strips. That way it looks like little diced up tomatoes. Now I'm taking some dark brown clay, and I'm going to condition it and roll it into a log that will fit into my taco shell. This will be the taco beef. I added in with some TLS to keep it secure into the shell. Make sure it fits in there. And you don't need a lot of the TLS at the bottom, just a little strip, just to make sure it sticks in there. Now I'm going to take different sized ball tools and my needle tool, and I'm going to poke and prod it and smush it around and try to get the closest that I can to the taco beef filling. Which I wish my camera could pick up the beef bits a little bit better. It's like I can't get too close to the lens or it just looks super blurry. Now I'm going to take a little TLS and a dark red brown chalk pastel, and I'm going to mix it together, and I'm going to add it to the beef, because taco meat usually has kind of like a red cast to it, almost like the sauce a little bit. So I'm going to add that with a needle tool to some of my beef and smush it around and get it mixed up in there really good. And this will kind of help our toppings to stick to the top of the taco also. But it just kind of adds a little more dimension and color to the beef instead of it just being one big solid brown log in there. It'll just kind of make it look a little more realistic. And you don't need a lot of it. I think I mixed up a little bit too much, but that's okay. Just use it for something else. Now we're going to put it all together. I'm adding the lettuce first, and I didn't pre-bake the lettuce once again, so I can stick them onto the beef and move them around until I like the way it looks on there. And then I'll just take my needle tool and I'll use my fingers too to pick up the little bits of shredded cheese and tomato and put those on there wherever I feel like it looks good or whatever. And I pushed down the tomato slices with my needle tool a little bit. I could probably add some TLS onto the lettuce to make the tomato and cheese stick a little bit better and be a little more secure, but I just didn't even bother with this this time. Felt like it was going to be stuck in there really good and okay. I wouldn't really have too many issues. Okay, for the sour cream, I use a tiny ball of white clay and mix it with a little bit of TLS to make like a thick icing almost consistency. And then I use my needle tool to make a little dollop of sour cream on the top of my taco. And if you're like me, I do a big dollop. I love sour cream on my taco. That's like my favorite part. So it's up to you on how big of a dollop you want. See, like, I think the first time around, this was not enough sour cream for me. So I ended up making another batch bigger and added some more. See, here we go. That's more like it. That's how much sour cream. And if it was me actually eating it, I'd probably put more than that on there. Here it is. With all the toppings on top. Now we're gonna add the eye pin. That's what I use to make this into a charm. I push the eye pin all the way through, and then I use my wire pliers to trim off a little bit at the bottom, just kind of make it a tiny bit shorter, and I curl the bottom of the pin up. Then I'll pull the pin from the top all the way back until the curled part of it disappears, and then I'll use my needle tool to hide any kind of metal peeking out at the bottom that I couldn't pull all the way through the top. And then I'm gonna bake it in the oven. I do 275, and for something like this I did 45 minutes, and I tint mine with the aluminum foil, that way it doesn't burn at the top, because the toaster oven seems to burn stuff. This is it out of the oven, and I'm about to seal it with a clear coat, and I'm using a satin clear coat, not a gloss clear coat for this, because I just didn't want my taco to be super shiny. I use a paper clip, and I'm going to feed it through the top of the eye pin and dip it into the entire thing of clear gloss, or clear coat. I got my paper towel there. I'm going to suspend it on a screwdriver and let it drip dry pretty much over the paper towel. And I'll come by, like, while it's drying, and just kind of take a Q-tip on the bottom, because the clear coat will pull up at the bottom and just kind of get that drip off. Now here it is, all sealed up and completely done now, and I'm going to add it to my necklace, and I use a coiled jump ring to make it into a necklace. And there it is. I hope you all enjoyed this one. Thanks for watching.